All right, here we are. We are the Varsity Voices, and we are here with you tonight with our latest episode, which is a extension of some of our, episodes throughout the year, Dan, which were our Zuko's Dog of the Week episodes. But, since it's the end of the year and there's all of the different end of the year awards and accolades which are coming out for all the players in Illinois, we thought it only fitting that we have a Varsity Voices Zuko's top dog of the year for a lot of our players within the Chicago Catholic League for each of the positions, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
So we're doing a top dog team.
We're doing a top dog team.
Top
we are.
Dog. Yeah, and Zuko's award was defensive, but he's expanded, and we're going to do both sides of the ball.
Right, just for
specials.
for this only. And this is very exclusive, too.
Sure.
Because what we're doing differently than what some of the other year-end accolades and awards do is that we're not giving first team, second team, honorable mention, special mention. We've got one top dog per position, right? And we'll let you know what that is. We've got one top dog quarterback. We've got 5 top dog offensive linemen. And on down the line, right? So it's a little bit different, and it's made it very difficult for us, Dan.
It's exclusive.
Very exclusive.
And really, really hard to do, Joe. When you start looking at the talent in this league, written down on a list like this that you've got to sort through, it's almost impossible. I could have put so many guys in here, and we could have. I understand now why the newspapers, have a lot of them have gone away from one team.
Yes,
now it's one
me
team
too.
One team per county, one team per conference, one team for area code, one team for it is because
one team
it's
per main street, 5 miles from a main street like Roosevelt Road, right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Because it's really hard when you look at it. It's really difficult and So Zuko's Dog of the Week is expanded to Zuko's Top Dogs.
Zuko's Top Dogs, which Zuko, he may not come out and visit, right, to actually give the award. Or you're pretty definitive on that, no, Dan. So I'm sure that's not happening.
He almost didn't make it to this episode. Joe, can I tell you about my evening real quick?
Yeah, let me hear. All
right. So my wife is at a Christmas party for work. So when that happens,
is that in quotes? Is that in quotes?
Right.
Yeah. Christmas party. Yeah.
So I take that opportunity, like I think a lot of guys do. I'm going to cook what I want to eat. Well, in our case, I do like fish. I love salmon, and no one in my house eats salmon, right, or eats fish of any type. So when the house is empty, that's my go-to. I've got some. I went and bought some. I thought, it was 33 degrees. The sun was out this afternoon. I thought I'm going to grill some salmon.
Yeah,
right?
Nice. I like it.
Yeah. So got some salmon, had some vegetables in there, trying to be healthy. Had some red wine my father-in-law made. Shout out to Tony Artino. God, he makes a nice Pinot Noir.
I've had it. The Pinot is good. I like a little bit peppery, which I really like.
Yeah. It's nice. It's outstanding.
All right.
So beautiful all day, right? Well, I mean, relative for December 19th, we're recording this. And so as I turn on the grill, I walk inside, I walk back out with the salmon, and it's snowing like crazy. Like almost white out. I thought, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. So the steps down to the patio are really slippery. And you know who really likes salmon, Joe?
Zuko
really likes salmon. He would not give me an inch to work with this salmon. I thought he was gonna jump on the grill. and take it off the grill. So I've got the snow. I'm sliding all over the place. I've got Zuko literally like gonna undercut me every time I step away from the grill, and I could tell he is waiting. If I slipped and that salmon even came below waist level, it was his.
It was his for sure.
Oh, it was his. And I made it. I got it made. Fought the snow. Got it done, and it was full of bones.
Oh, you're kidding me!
No,
oh,
no.
How
Such
disappointing!
I ate around it.
Yeah,
I did eat around it.
And
the wine is still good.
The wine is still good. Eating around things is the Frevaletti way, right?
Yes,
so
of course.
We're good at that.
Oh yeah.
But kudos to Zuko that he's a big fish dog.
Oh God.
I'd like to see him in that, like, you know how they show the pictures of the salmon swimming upstream?
Yeah.
And the bears, the grizzly bears are there, like, snatching the salmon out of the water. I picture Zuko doing that. So
right there with him.
You got to make that trip one year with him.
No, thank you.
Zuko, the Grizzlies, and you.
Do you think there's salmon in the Fox River? I could get there.
If it is, it's big, fat, lazy salmon. Yeah.
Right.
Flipping over on its side, half dead.
Yes. Yeah. So that was my evening as I tried to finalize my prep for this team, which is such a challenge because there's so many good players. But I think I made it through. So
yeah. I agree with you, Dan. One of the hardest things I did all year is this episode, the research for this episode, because there are so many good players. And you and I talked about this, and, we did not want to do the whole first team, second team, special mention, honorable mention thing, right? We wanted our top dogs, and that made it really, really tough because there are so many good players within the Chicago Catholic League, so many of them that had just outstanding seasons, right? And you hate to leave anybody off, right?
Yeah.
You said it before we started tonight that now you see why some of the, whether it's a Tribune, the Sun-Times, the Daily Herald, Shaw Local, whatever, now you see why they've got first team, second team, honorable mention, special mention, right?
Yeah, there's 30 teams out there.
Yeah,
30 all area teams.
You don't want to leave some of these kids off who've had great years, but
the talent in the area is outstanding. Not just the Catholic League, which is I think next level, but the talent in the area is outstanding.
Yeah, I agree. And, we'll go through both of our kind of picks by position, Dan, and we'll let people know what those are. But, when you look at, the by position and some of the accolades which have come out and some of the awards which have come out over the last couple of weeks after the season ended, just think about some of the quarterbacks in the Chicago Catholic League. You've got Jack Elliott, you've got Logan Malachek, you've got Chase Kwiatkowski, you've got who else? Brady Palmer, you've got Juju Rodriguez,
Ryan Fitzgerald,
Israel Abrams. I mean, some state champs, right, this year. Others just had outstanding years. So it is so hard to pick, as far as, who is that player. But, the one of the things I use, Dan, and really kind of narrow it down and coming down to one or whatever it is as far as the number of players we have is I refer back to our Zuko's Dog of the Week throughout the year. And, what you would say at the presentations for when we gave the Zuko's Dog of the Week award, when we were able to get out there and give it to the actual player, was that it was a player that exhibits the traits of Zuko, right? And It's relentless. It was,
Tireless.
tireless. It was, just a dog, right? So for me, it came down to who exhibited that the most over maybe, somebody else who had the same stats, had better stats, whatever it might be. But, I tried to keep that in the back of my mind, Dan, when it came down to making that final choice.
So, and just to be clear, you and I both picked a team. So there
Right.
will be more than 22. Just to go over the mechanics of it, we each picked an offense and a defense, kind of a full offense and a full defense. We added an athlete. All right,
Right.
which we gave ourselves some grace there and added an athlete, thank goodness. And then we added a specialist on each side of the ball.
Right.
So our teams could be different. We've talked a little bit about some of our difficult choices, but as far as we know, our teams, they're going to have some of the same people, but there's going to be different ones too. So all of them are going to be top dogs.
Right. All of them are going to be top dogs, and we're going to recognize them here in our podcast. Plus, we'll be doing posts out there on X and wherever else. And, the people and players will be able to see that. But, real quickly, Dan, if you look at, before we get into that, if you look at the Chicago Catholic League and some of the accolades this year for some of the players here, and maybe just point out a couple. You've got as I mentioned, you've got the quarterbacks. You've got Jack Elliott, right, who seems to kind of be heading the list of some of the quarterbacks within the Chicago Catholic League as far as the different accolades go. Running backs, you've got Drew McPherson, right? You've got Larry Stringham from Joliet Catholic. On wide receivers, how tough of a time did you have picking 3 wide receivers, Dan?
Yeah, it is a prime position. So we've talked about everything kind of rolling downhill, and the wide receiver position has taken over as the prime position of the quarterback in the NFL. It's kind of supplanted the running back. Boy, there's a lot of good wide receivers. Wow,
There are
a lot of good young ones too.
Good young ones
that
too.
That was crazy too. I didn't necessarily take that into account. I didn't care, so to speak, what class they were. But yeah, wide receivers really tough. And as one thing that stays the same, Joe, in football at every level,
right?
Offensive linemen get shortchanged, don't they?
They do. They do. So I was thinking about this, Dan, when I was looking at the offensive linemen, and obviously we covered some of them, right? But when you think about our episodes over the course of the season this year, how many times did we talk about offensive linemen?
Not enough. It's just
not
hard.
Enough.
Yeah, there's 5 of them, and the camera doesn't necessarily follow those guys. You have to really, really do it right. You'd want to see end zone views, so you're kind of going on, I do watch film and I do watch some of the linemen. There were some that jumped out, but we're as guilty as anyone, I think when it comes to talking about
we
linemen.
are.
And, it's just hard to pick those guys out. They're a big mass in the middle. They're big to begin with. And they all look like one guy when they on the snap of the ball, with some of the camera work out there. So, they tend to get shortchanged still. So even more so than any other position, more so than D-line for sure. So
for sure.
But I was able to come up with 5. I did watch some film to kind of confirm or find some new people. Some of these all area teams surprised me. Joe, some of the linemen out there, Sam Steck, Malik Sala, Charlie Steck from Brother Rice, Cam Jurisic, Ben Konopka, Peter LaFleur from St. Viator, Jalen Strouder from Carmel, Joe Herbert, Loyola, Jalen Torres from St. Francis, Dominic Bitts from DePaul, J.P. Bobick from St. Ignatius,
Yeah.
Rico Schreiber, Marist, monster of a human being, and James Alexander, from IC. So wanted to at least get their names out there of the guys. You may have more, Joe, on the list that you were considering that I didn't read, but wanted to at least make sure we said those guys because they don't get enough love.
No, they don't get enough love. And I think you alluded to that throughout the course of the year, Dan, as we were doing maybe our recap episodes or whatever it might be. So kudos to you because you never really completely forgot about the offensive linemen. I feel like you would bring them up and you would say, we got to give them their credit. All these guys who run the ball, pass the ball, catch the ball, they do that at the benefit of the offensive lineman, right?
Yeah,
and,
great way to put it. Great
yeah.
way to put it. Yeah,
So,
and you're seeing it locally on the professional level here. Just how much it matters.
It matters.
Right? Yeah,
it matters a ton.
Yes.
Ton. Yeah, and they're in the trenches and they're road graders, right? I think from an offensive line standpoint, they don't necessarily expect all the kudos and accolades to be thrown their way, but we don't want to forget about them, and we did not forget about them, Dan.
Nope. Yeah. I'll be interested to see what our top dogs look like at the O-line.
All right, you want to jump into that then?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so our top dogs, right? So we've got offense, as you mentioned, Dan. We've got offense. We've got one quarterback. We've got 2 running backs, 5 offensive linemen, 3 wide receivers, 1 athlete, 1 specialist, right?
Yes.
That's offense. Defense. We've got 4 defensive linemen, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive backs. We've got 1 athlete, 1 specialist on defense. And then we also have 1 kicker.
Yes.
Do I have that covered?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, good.
I don't know
if
I have it covered in my people, but I think I do.
Right. All right. So, and like I mentioned, this is the toughest thing I did all year as far as coming up with this. So, I hate to leave anybody out. And, maybe we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through this, Dan. But, it's so many good players, so many deserving players. But as we mentioned at the beginning, there can only be one, so to speak, one top dog, right, for each of these positions. So, let's start right at the top with the quarterback.
Okay.
Quarterback, Dan. And as we've talked all year, and we kind of alluded to earlier in this episode, there are just some outstanding quarterbacks in the Chicago Catholic League this year. I mean, you've got, am I going to list them off? You've got, Jack Elliott from Mount Carmel. You've got Logan Malachuk from Nazareth. You've got Chase Kwiatkowski from, is that St. Rita?
St. Lawrence.
St. Lawrence, sorry. You've got Ryan Kabaki from Bennett. You can just go right down the list. You got Brady Palmer from St. Francis, Juju Rodriguez from DePaul Prep. I mean, how many good quarterbacks were in the Chicago Catholic League this year? A ton.
Yeah, I mean, there were. I saw a list out to 8. 8 of the 24 teams had all area quarterbacks. We didn't mention Jamin Williams, Jack Wanzum, Trey Taylor,
right?
Cooper Komet.
Komet. Yeah.
And the what names I didn't see surprised me too. And we didn't go necessarily on the all conference teams. We went based on print media, and kind of started our list there. So, but I, not seeing like Stephen Armbruster's name come up a lot, or CJ Grace come up a lot. Those guys were critical in some of these victories. So many good so many good quarterbacks. The position is very healthy. I look at a lot of these guys, a lot of seniors, but there is, there's a couple young guys too, and Abrams and Taylor, and so
Palmer's coming back next year. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. But like you said, I think that's a movie line too. There can only be one. I don't know what movie it's from.
We'll look it up.
Yeah, all right. But Joe, we got to pick one. So
got to pick one.
Yeah. So you go first. Your top dog for the quarterbacks in the Catholic.
My top dog for quarterback, and taking into account everything you just mentioned, I mentioned regarding the other quarterbacks in the league. My top dog at quarterback this year, Dan, is Jack Elliott. Just an outstanding player. Obviously from his stats. 36 touchdowns, over 3,000 yards. He also had over 850 rushing yards. Another 18 touchdowns, I think, on the rushing side of the ball. The one thing that I think separates him a bit from the other outstanding quarterbacks in the Chicago Catholic League, at least for me, Dan, was that the way he plays like a dog. He plays like Zuko, and he has those traits, right? He would put the team on his back and say, you follow me. Yeah, I've got a lot of great talent around me, but I am going to lead this. I'm going to lead us down. We are going to score touchdowns, and we are going to win this game. There's just something about this kid which, transcends the really good high school quarterbacks, and he's taken that to a next level. So Jack Elliott is my top dog at quarterback.
All right, Joe. So I came down to two. It was Logan Malachuk at Naz. What a career. I also thought that he plays like a dog. He's a guy. I was just amazed at how he was never rattled. But in the end, because of some of the other factors, as far as being so dangerous with your feet, I also went with Jack Elliott. think he plays like a dog. Like you said, put the team on his back. And you said something that sticks out to me and is a big factor. It's essentially the it factor. You don't know what it is, but you know it when you see it.
Right.
And there's a few guys on this list that have that, but no one has it any more than Jack Elliott. And he just was you saw that they were a different team completely. How Jack Elliott's presence could affect the defense, it seemed to, in some way, shape, or form, because he just was that much of a factor on that team. So I agree with you. We're going to be the same here, and my top dog for quarterback in the CCL this year is Jack Elliott.
Great. Okay. Congrats to Jack Elliott. He deserves it for sure. All right, let's go to we decided, Dan, we were going to pick two running backs on offense, and this was really hard too. When you think about the running backs, in the Chicago Catholic League this year too, you've got the trio from Joliet Catholic and Larry Stringham, Nate McGreeny, and the other name is escaping me, but Loyola, you've got Drew McPherson, you've got Davion Ellis from St. Viator, who had an excellent season. Who else? Nick Herman from St. Rita.
John
McAuliffe. I mean,
Marty Radgowski from Bennett.
Marty Radgowski, unbelievable.
How about
right?
Jeremiah Peterson from
Peterson, right? Yeah. So just stacked. Running back room is just stacked in the Chicago Catholic League. But as you and I talked about, it can only come down to two running backs. And, when I looked at this, and I remember I said part of my criteria was, who's my dog, right? Who's my top dog? They all have great stats. They all had great years, but there's a couple of guys, two guys who stood out to me over the course of the season, two players that, their teams really relied on when, they needed those tough yards. They needed that big play. They needed somebody to step up. And these two players did that for me, Dan. Their stats are really outstanding, but from a Zuko's top dog standpoint, both of these guys are maybe that notch above, or they are a notch above. And one is, for me, Larry Stringham from Joliet Catholic. The other is Drew McPherson from Loyola.
So, Joe, gosh, you can tell we're brothers, right? So, I was looking at this and thinking about that as well, and just thinking about some of the film I watched and games that everyone could see about some of these tailbacks, and just how two guys really stood out to me, and it's the same two. It's Drew McPherson from Loyola and Larry Stringham from Joliet Catholic. Larry Stringham, I'm going to date myself here.
Yeah,
you remember Eric Dickerson, right?
I do.
Obviously, yeah. So when I used to watch Eric Dickerson as a kid, I thought, how do you stop this guy? His long strides, his running style, he fell forward. It seemed like he never got anything less than 4 yards. Not that Larry Stringham runs a lot like, Eric Dickerson, but I got that same feeling, like he was never stopped.
Yeah.
He was never stopped for a loss. Right. You just never saw it. And just a guy he's a big guy, and he's a powerful runner, but he's kind of a glider and smooth. If you could have that. And so he seemed to be someone that week in and week out was always there for JCA, always there, and someone that I think when things got difficult for Joliet Catholic, it was, let's give Larry Stringham the football.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
The same with Drew McPherson, and what sets him apart for me is his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield and be so dangerous, and be a guy that you could do so much with all over the field, and he was a guy that you saw it in the state championship game, that was that they won last month, but he just was so good at finding his way, right? He's got great vision. He's a guy that when the hole was blocked up, broke it to the outside, always seemed to gain yards, and was really dangerous in several aspects. So for those reasons, that's why, we are the same again with both Larry Stringham and Drew McPherson.
Yeah. And who was your comp for Larry Stringham? As far as from
Eric Dickerson.
You know what? It's so interesting for me to hear you say that, Dan, because I do see that right in Larry Stringham. I also see it in Drew McPherson. They both got kind of that gliding approach to running, and you never maybe Stringham is a little bit more of a power back, right? And he's willing to put his head down, helmet down, and slam right into you.
Yeah, you've got to be for JCA, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Drew McPherson, one of those guys, running backs who you think you've got a beat on him, and all of a sudden he's by you for 5 yards and gone, right?
Yeah.
And, I mean, Eric Dickerson for sure for both of these guys.
Yeah. And, Drew McPherson's a guy that you wouldn't necessarily think that he's like this, but you saw it when you watched the film. He's a guy that, he could make you miss in a phone booth, right?
Yes, and, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, two really good choices, a lot of good players here at the running back position. And I think our two are pretty strong.
Yeah, I do too. And well-deserving of our top dogs for the running back position. So let's move on to the offensive line, Dan.
Okay.
And we decided 5 offensive linemen were going to be our top dogs, right? And this was, I'm probably going to say this a bunch of times over the course of this episode, but, very difficult decision because there were some just outstanding offensive linemen within the Chicago Catholic League this year. What it came down to for me was who kind of separated themselves from the standpoint of, if it was 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4, who were they going to run behind? Who were they going to? Who was their team going to count on to make that block, to open that hole, to get those tough 3 to 4 yards? And the other thing that I kind of took into account here for me was the leadership aspect, because we know how important that is actually all across the team, but really on the offensive line as well, as far as from a communication standpoint, leadership standpoint. If you've got some guys to your right or to your left who are younger players, what you do in that case. Who are the guys who play, to the echo of the whistle, right, from the offensive line standpoint. So those were all the things that I kind of took into account here, Dan, as well as, who's my dog? Who was that on the offensive line? So you want me to give you my 5
yes,
here, Dan?
Yes, you've prepped it well.
All right. So I've got from Loyola, Joey Herbert. From DePaul Prep, I've got Dominic Bitts. From Montini, I've got J.C. Hayes. From Joliet Catholic, I've got Malik Saleh. And from St. Francis, I've got Jalen Torres. And I told you how difficult this was for me. There were a couple guys that were really hard to leave off this, Dan, and I just hate to do that. But we said we're only going one, per each of these slots. So, I mean, I'll mention Ben Kanapka from St. Viator. They didn't have a great year or a year that they expected, but he's just a road grader, right? As far as offensive linemen are concerned. But, my 5, again, Joey Herbert, Dominic Bitts, J.C. Hayes, Malik Saleh, and Jalen Torres.
All right. Really good list, Joe. We've got some differentiation here.
All right.
So
good.
For the first time, right? So that's always a good thing. That says that the health of the offensive line is strong. So
yes.
Now we've got some of the same ones. All right. So now you just mentioned one of the guys that I have on my list as a top dog, Ben Kanopka at St. Viator. Love the way he plays. I looked at a lot of nasty, and it's funny I think it was stronger interior line than it was at tackle this year. And I know Ben played tackle, but he really stood out to me because he played with an edge. And
yes.
So I've got Ben Kanopka. I've got Sam Steck from Nazareth. I also have Malik Saleh. I also have Joey Herbert, and I also have Dom Bitts. So
okay.
So
all right, good.
One guy, Joe, I want to mention that I struggled with, and was right down to the wire for me was JP Bobick at St. Ignatius. So really good player. The way their offense is designed, they need to have strong offensive linemen. He's really, really good, and someone that just came right down to the end for me. But yeah, Malik Saleh jumped off the film for me when I saw him. He's a guy JCA relied on to pull. He was that puller in their power game and did a great job. I mean, and I also looked at, how they did against really good competition. And he was good against Naz, and some of their guys up front. So he stood out for me. Sam Steck, I feel like I've heard Sam Steck's name as a Nazareth offensive lineman for 10 years.
Right.
Yeah. Back into my coaching days. And so he's been so good for so long. He epitomizes what you talked about as far as a leader and a guy that does a great job, captain, just one of those, bellwethers that you could just hang your hat on that he was going to be really good every week. So it's good to see. And some really good old linemen there.
Yes, well deserving for sure.
Yeah.
And Dan, one thing about Ben Kanopka, you know who he reminds me of? Now, did this guy go to Northwestern and then on to the pros? But Matt O'Dwyer,
Oh yeah, he
just
did.
nasty.
Yeah, yeah. Matt was there when I was there. He's a couple of years younger than us, but you knew he was different. You knew he was different right away.
Yeah,
And so that's a great comp, and yeah. So it's there's that nasty factor was a big deal for me.
yes, it was for me too. And he's going to have a good, good career. He's going to Army, by the way. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to follow them. That's a great program. That just gets better and better every year, and they are going to like having him. So, all right. So that's our offensive lineman. Congrats to our top dogs there. Let's move on to the wide receivers, Dan.
Do we have to?
Yeah. I was just going to say before you said that, there's a lot of tough decisions that had to be made on both sides of the ball for some of our top dogs. Wide receiver may be one of the more difficult ones. I don't know how you felt about it, but we only can pick 3, Dan. So
yeah, it's a little rough.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the tables on you here.
I knew you were going to do that.
And I'm going to let you lead this one on the wide receivers. So tell me your 3, Dan, because I still don't have only 3.
yeah. I don't either. I've got 4 or 5 highlighted here. So the list, like you said, long. Davion Ellis, I had a wideout. I don't know if it's Santino Florio, Ian Willis, Cooper Lehman, Jimmy Maxson, Luke Doyle, Dario Milivojevic, Gavin O'Brocta, Luke Olson, Jimmy Penley, Kyle Richardson, Treston Smith, Gavin Vradenberg, Luke Wilds, Trenton Walker, Braden Peavy, Jake Sestone, Andrew Bjorson, Will Carlson, Matt Osterman, blah, 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 blah. There's so many.
That's like the whole CCL roster right there.
God, it's unbelievable. So I think I went a little different here.
Okay.
And I went on a lot of production, but I also went on guys that make big plays for their team when they had to, or guys that were just, my first guy here, Trenton Walker, wide receiver at Nazareth. Unstoppable. Right. He's unstoppable. He goes up and gets the football, 1,400 yards, 77 catches. That's just unbelievable. Yes. Just a great season. He's a junior, right?
Yeah, that's a problem for the rest of the Chicago Catholic League.
Yeah,
right.
So he's my first guy.
Okay.
My next guy, Joe, Gavin Vradenberg from Loyola.
Really? All right.
Yes. And,
I like it.
Yeah. I felt like every time I watched Loyola and it was 3rd and long and they needed a big pass play, I felt like he was on the receiving end of it. And I felt like he upped his game in the playoffs. His hands are ridiculous. He catches anything near him. And I think an amazing high school wide receiver. I don't know what his plans are long term, but or how he measures. I don't really care because the guy just catches the football.
Yeah. Okay.
My third guy, Joe, also maybe a little outside the box, but Luke Doyle at Bennett.
All right.
And I knew Luke Doyle was fast, but watching some of the film, on Luke this past year, we talked about Luke. I felt like it was every week. So I went back and watched some more film, and he's blowing by guys. I mean, he's blowing past guys geared toward defending him. And he's a guy that outruns angles on the field, so someone's got an angle on him. And again, I'm trying to watch against good competition. And he also another junior, over 1,100 yards receiving. Just had an outstanding year. So that's my 3, Joe. I think a little out of the box. So I think we might differ on this, but those were the guys that I thought, if I've got to go and I want to make a receiving crew, this is kind of how I want to build it.
Okay.
With these guys. So
Yeah.
let me hear yours.
I can't argue with you on any of yours, Dan, because like I said before we got into the wide receivers here, this was probably one of the more difficult positions for me to pick for top dogs, because there's so many outstanding players. And I had Luke Doyle on my list. Obviously, he's the top 5, even though we can only pick 3, right? Yeah. One you didn't mention that had just an incredible year was Braden Peavy from DePaul Prep, right? Over 1,200 receiving yards, 73 catches, 13 touchdowns, just a great year. But, I also looked at, who the dog factor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And who made the plays when plays needed to be made, and who did that at a high level. So, we differ a little bit. I've got, as one of my wide receivers, I've got Quentin Burrell from Mount Carmel. Just, top target for Jack Elliott. 75 catches, over just about 1,300 yards, 17 touchdowns. Incredible. This kid is only a sophomore. He's just going to get better and better. And, there's no denying the production he had this year. Plus the way, him and Jack Elliott really kind of meshed as the season went along. So I felt like without Quentin Burrell, Mount Carmel was probably not quite as good as they were throughout the course of the year. I agree with you on Trenton Walker. Outstanding. Unbelievable. Can't believe this kid is a junior too. So this another underclassman, right, in my wide receivers. He had, I think, the most receiving yards out of anybody in the Chicago Catholic League, with over 1,400 yards, 77 catches. I think you mentioned 19 touchdowns. Unbelievable. He's coming back next year, and just had an outstanding year. The kid played tough all year long, and when Nazareth needed a big play, and we know they had a lot of big play guys on their team.
Mount Carmel, yeah.
Yes. Trenton Walker was there to make that play.
I'm sorry, Nazareth. Yes.
Yeah, Nazareth. So, and my last pick is Santino Florio from Montini. Another player, Dan, that I think exudes the Zuko's dog attributes. When Montini needed somebody to make a play, they need somebody to make a difference. Who did they get the ball to? A lot of the times it was Santino Florio. He's not the biggest of players, but he plays like he's 4 inches taller and 25 pounds heavier, Dan. And he just does it all out there on the field. He gives you everything that he has, and he really exemplifies what I think a top dog would be. So my other pick for wide receiver was Santino Florio.
All right, all good picks. Good picks. So that covers the group. So now we've got an athlete and a specialist.
Athlete and a specialist from an offensive standpoint, Dan, are kind of geared towards the offense, right? So I'm gonna go first, right, with my athlete and my specialist for all offense. Right. So my athlete is Davion Ellis from St. Viator.
Good pick.
He's just had, a great career, actually, right? And he's done it in a lot of different ways. He's played defense. He, makes a lot of tackles. I think he had 3 interceptions this year. He had just under 1,000 yards receiving this year, 46 catches. He had 13 touchdowns. He also rushed for over 300 yards. He's IHSFCA All-State. He was the MVP for the Purple Division within the Chicago Catholic League. This is a guy who just does it all, and I just think he's a perfect choice for the athlete and top dog athlete within the Chicago Catholic League from an offensive perspective.
That's a great pick. Do you want to do your specialist too?
Yeah, let me do my specialist too,
right.
And then I'll hand it over to you, Dan.
Okay.
So my specialist and on the offensive side of the ball is Zach Washington from St. Francis. Just an ultra talented player in a variety of different ways. You and I talked a lot about over the course of the season this year and watching film, guys who just jump off the film. Zach Washington is one of those guys, not just because of his speed, which is outstanding, but the way he's able to utilize himself, not only on offense but on special teams. I think he had over 600 yards of receiving. The one thing that I thought was just outstanding is not only 650 yards receiving, but over 20 yards per catch, Dan. I mean, so this guy is just explosive. Whenever he touches the ball, he is a danger to score a touchdown. He's a top kickoff return threat. I think he returned 3 kickoffs for touchdowns this year. And, again, no matter where he's at on the field, you've always got to be watching out for him. And he proved that this year. He's only a junior. He's going to be a handful next year. But Zach Washington is my specialist top dog pick from St. Francis for this year.
Good pick. Good choice. All right. So my athlete, I went back to the wide receiver core, and I had to pick Jake Sestone from Nazareth.
All right.
All the guy does is score touchdowns. Yeah, he is just he's a guy that has got, what really stands out to me is his feel for the game. Logan Malachuk would do a lot of scrambling, right? They did a lot of scramble drill, whether designed or just because there was pressure, whatever, nothing broke down. He always made the right decision, and it was usually ended up in a touchdown. And he was one of those guys, Joe, that I felt like we talked about week after week after week after week.
We did, yes, we did. Yep.
When they were even if Naz lost, Jake Sestone had a touchdown or two. He just a guy that showed up every week, really, really athletic from the wide receiver position in a group that is outstanding at Nazareth. You talk about wide receiver groups, Mount Carmel, Nazareth, just outstanding. So Jake Sestone gets my athlete on the offensive side. And for specialist,
great pick.
Yeah, for my specialist, Joe, I agree with you. I think Zach Washington was just so electric in the return game, kickoff returns especially. What I like about Zach is that he was a master of making something out of nothing. You saw it more than once, and sometimes in some big games, but he's one of those guys that just made people miss. And as soon as he got an inch of daylight, he was through it and gone. And he's one of those guys that doesn't even look like he's going that fast, like Top Gear, and he's pulling away from everyone. And so he's a gifted returner, and he's got the right mindset for it. Like you mentioned, also an outstanding receiver. So Zach Washington, I agree with you on the specialist for the offensive side.
All right, awesome. Yeah, all well-deserving and great picks, Dan. So that's our kind of offensive side of the ball, right? And our top dogs on there. Yeah. Let's move to defense, Dan. And let's start with the defensive line, another tough picks as far as who to put here. We picked 4 defensive linemen, for our top dog award, and each of these players to me, and there's a couple of Zuko's Dog of the Week award winners here, Dan.
Yeah,
actually, more than a couple. I think a few. Does a few mean 3?
Yes.
Right.
And several is more.
Yeah.
Yes.
But and some of these, actually, all of these, I should say, are some of the more highly decorated. Got a lot of accolades, and they are really well deserved over the course of the year. All of these players have had, just outstanding seasons. They've anchored the defensive line for each of their teams, and a lot of these guys have also been moved around a fair amount. And, I put them at defensive line because I think that's kind of where primarily they were. But, these guys have been relied on to do a lot of different things for their particular teams, and they've done them well. I think the least amount of sacks amongst this group was 6. All of these guys were, close to, 60 tackles or more minimum. As far as that's concerned, with a lot of sacks, ton of tackles for loss amongst this group. Really just studs. The kind of guys you want up front on your defensive line, anchoring your defensive line. So let me give you my 4 defensive linemen who I consider are top dogs this year, Dan. And one is from Montini, Nicky Castaldo. Montini's defense, as we know, has just been outstanding all year. And you can point to a lot of different players on Montini's defense, and we probably will, as we go through our defensive list here. But, as you and I know, a lot of this starts up front on both sides of the ball. And, as Montini's defense goes, it's as Nicky Castaldo goes. And, he just had an outstanding year. He had almost 100 tackles, 14 tackles for loss, several recovered fumbles, all state, IHS, FCAL state, all CCL as well. Helped Montini win the 3A state championship. Nicky Castaldo, well deserved, one of the defensive linemen top dogs this year. The other is Nate Marshall, Dan, from Fenwick. He's gotten a lot of accolades, a lot of press, well deserved. Another guy moved him all over the place. He played a little offense as well. I think he had 6 sacks. Also scored a couple of touchdowns, had some fumble recoveries. He's just all over the field, no matter where you put him. Another top dog for me is Nate Marshall from Fenwick. The other one who is Nate Marshall was one of our dogs of the week during the season. Another one who was a dog of the week from Marist, Brad Fitzgibbon. One of the things I like about Brad is he is steady as heck, and he plays at a high level, right? And you can just tell that when Brad is in the game, the rest of the Marist defense feels very good about how they're going to do and how they're going to do against the other team's offense, because, Brad just kind of leads that defense, and he's right up front doing that. He had 6.5 sacks this year, going to Iowa. A lot of tackles as well, a lot of tackles for loss. They had a great defense, and like I said, led by Brad. They only let up, I think, just over 15 points a game throughout the whole season in playoffs. The other defensive lineman is Gabe Kaminsky from Nazareth. Another one of our Zuko's Dog of the Week winners. Been a top defensive player in the Chicago Catholic League for several years now. Just outstanding player. Had 6 sacks, 17 tackles for loss. Another All-State player of the year in the CCL in the Green Division. Gabe Kaminsky shows up each and every game. And another guy, I think that, when the rest of the defense looks up front and they see Gabe there on the line or moved around somewhere else, that they feel much better about their defense. So really kind of 4 outstanding players here on the defensive line.
All right. So we've got some of the same, right?
All right, good.
So yeah, that's a testament to these guys. They definitely jumped off the film. So I went about this, Joe, by trying to build a defensive line. So I wanted 2 interior guys and 2 kind of edge guys. So I'll start with the interior, and that's where we have the same. I've got Nicky Castaldo from Montini. Just the production. I mean, those numbers that you read for a defensive lineman are ridiculous.
Yes.
All that production that he had on a team full of big producers, defensively. So Nicky Castaldo was a kind of an easy pick for me. The same with the other guy, and that's Brad Fitzgibbon, Dog of the Week. He is you said steady, but a guy that rises up and makes a big play when a big play is called for.
Absolutely.
And
great call.
And an absolute leader. You could tell the team looked up to him when we were there to present him with the award. Just a great guy, really, really productive. All his accolades are well earned, like you mentioned. Honorable mention All-State, sometimes All-Area, Southtown, Daily Southtown first team. So just an outstanding player. My edge guys, Joe, so our same one, Nate Marshall. And the thing I can say about Nate Marshall is I felt like he toyed with these guys. I really did. I felt like he kind of, I always gave the Fenwick coaches credit because they kind of let him play his game, and it wasn't necessarily your traditional 5 technique or edge player.
Right.
He was able to do some things because he was so good. He's one of those guys that you say, if you're not necessarily doing exactly the scheme we drew up, you better make the play. And he did every time.
Yeah.
And I felt like when he needed to rise up, he did. He's outstanding, worth every accolade that he's received. My other edge rusher, Joe, is a junior D lineman from Joliet Catholic, Ian Campbell.
All right. Yes.
Really, really high producer from that edge spot. And the thing that jumps out about Ian Campbell is his motor. He is one of these guys that's relentless as he plays the game. It never shuts off for him. I imagine he sleeps really well at night because he plays so hard every game they play. And I thought he was just outstanding from a defensive end position. So Ian Campbell is one of my 4 top dogs, Joe. And like I said, I'd like to go into battle with this D line anytime.
Yes, I would too, Dan. And all really good choices. Congrats to all these guys for for their recognition. It's well deserved. So can't argue with any of your choices either, Dan. I wrestled with some of those where we differ for sure. Yeah. Let's move to linebackers, and we can only pick 3.
Ooh, this is really hard. This was as hard as wide receiver for me.
Yeah, it was hard. So what was kind of your separation factor for, initially there were like 8 linebackers on my list that I had to get down to 3. What was your differentiator, or
Well,
maybe one or two? Yeah,
I kind of went at it as building a defense. That's I looked at
yeah,
what I would want. So there were guys I felt like that I would put at the Mike, and then I would put at the Sam, and that I'd put at Will. And just based on what my thoughts are. It could be way off on what I expect from some of those guys, but just the number of players in this list, and Joe, I'm just going to read some of the list. Jacob
yeah.
Hylena, Daniel Rouse at Joliet Catholic, Matt Mucha at Mount Carmel, Ronnie Gordon from Marian Catholic, excuse me, Dominic Kulak from IC, Ricky Erickson from Marist, James Kingsbury from St. Rita, Christian Pierce, Brother Rice, Michael Roche from Marmion, Foley Calcagno at IC, Jackson Lane at Montini, Ryan Palmieri, St. Francis. So a lot of good players there.
A lot of good players.
A lot of good ones. So the three I ended up with.
All right, let me hear it.
So my Mike linebacker is Gabe Kaminsky. So I know he played a lot of linebacker. I know early in his career he's a D lineman, so we give him that. I felt like he played a lot of Mike this year.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. And he just dominates the middle. When you see linemen bouncing off a guy, like they're not even there. Linemen with an angle on them, and just big play after big play. I simply, felt like last year he was unblockable and the best player in the state finals that I saw last year. And his pass rushing ability played into this, Joe, because one of the things about linebackers, when you're teaching them and you call a blitz, they get really excited and they slam into the running back, right? It's like, no, that's not the goal of a blitz, and we want you to get to the quarterback, right? If it's a pass play, or running back, right. Obviously, if it's a run, but we want you to get to the football. And Gabe Kaminsky's ability to make people miss on him is just uncanny. It's uncanny. And he's had that ability since he's been a freshman. And so he was an easy pick for the Mike linebacker for me. I think his future's at linebacker. I don't know. We'll
probably
see. But, So then my Will, all right, guy that's kind of flowing backside and coming in and filling and making a ton of plays, Jack Paris from Fenwick. Right. He was Shaw first team all area, but I kind of felt like he was shortchanged. I thought he was outstanding all year. A guy we talked about from July on, and I felt like he lived up to it. He was just really, really good. And a difference maker for that team. He literally was a guy that was another guy that was there when you needed a big play. A lot of tackles for loss, covered sideline to sideline. Got to the ball carrier with some anger, like all of Fenwick's defense, and just was outstanding. All right, so he's my Will. And then my Sam, Joe, the guy who's probably going to, for me anyway, he's going to be maybe out in coverage a little more. He's going to be out on that number 2 receiver. And this guy, this was an easy pick for me. Easy pick, dog of the week, Justin Buckner. I thought he was outstanding all year. Was the one player that made me jump out of my chair on Friday Night Blitz one time. By not only a play but a series. I've talked about that with you a bunch of times. Talked about it with him when we gave him the award. He was just a great player and really great against the run, really effective against the pass, great against scrambling quarterbacks. Was a guy that St. Rita turned to when they needed a big play offensively in the Wildcat offense. So this, out of a really challenging group of guys to pick, Justin Buckner was easy for me.
Yeah, he was easy for me too, Dan, and he's one of my picks as well. I mean, he was an electric defender, right? And, when I watch Justin Buckner play, I think of he's not a throwback linebacker, right? I feel like he's more of that that current kind of modern day linebacker, maybe
Yeah.
not quite as big, but he can go from sideline to sideline and make plays. And when he gets there, he hits you, right?
Yes.
He's not guiding you out of bounds. He is knocking your block off, right? And
Yep.
I love that about Justin Buckner. So, he is one of my top dogs at the linebacker position as well. The others, one is, and this maybe is more of a throwback, right? But when I think of a Mike linebacker, that's kind of what I think of. I think of that guy who's in the middle, who controls the defense, who goes from C gap to C gap, right? And when you need him to, he can get out to the edge and he can make that play as well, right? Or he can fill. And for me, that's Daniel Rouse from Joliet Catholic. Just a tough-nosed player, and always around the ball. Any team had difficulty running the ball up the middle on Joliet Catholic because who was there all the time? It was Daniel Rouse. And, the guy just looks like a linebacker. He plays like a linebacker. It's pretty rare you're going to move the ball against him up the middle. So, one of my other top dogs here was Daniel Rouse from Joliet Catholic. The other one, Dan, is when I watch some of the film, and I watch a lot of film on linebackers because I hated to not include some of the guys that I did not include. But Jacob Bailina from St. Lawrence, another guy who I feel like has got some kind of old school attitude, but he's got some new school or modern day linebacker speed, can get to the edges. And when he gets there, he just hits you. And St. Lawrence had an outstanding defense. I think it was led by Jacob Bailina. He was all over the field, in every game, all state, over 100 tackles this year, which is tremendous. And I just feel like he played at a level for St. Lawrence that really helped them get to the point that they needed to in the playoffs. And, so he was my other top dog pick for linebacker. So I've got Daniel Rouse, Justin Buckner, and Jacob Bailina.
Good picks all across the board. Yep, and we left a lot of good people off that list.
We did. And can I mention one, Dan?
Sure.
Matt Mucha, who I left off. And there's not necessarily any particular reason he's not on, other than we were only picking three linebackers, and I just felt like. For me, kind of the final criteria was a bit of the dog factor, and I felt like the three that I picked had that. But Matt Mucha, outstanding year, and really leading the defense for Mount Carmel. So hated to leave him off, but he definitely had a great year.
Yeah, he did, no doubt about it. Bunch of guys we could have put on here.
Yep. Okay, so let's go to now our defensive backs, Dan. And we decided we would pick four defensive backs for our top dogs in this category. Again, another tough category, and it came down to me for those guys in the defensive backfield who not only had really good stats, but also were there when needed and making big plays when needed. If somebody needed a big stop, on 4th and 2, 4th and 3, I felt like these guys were always there and making plays all over the field. So a lot of things that maybe you don't. You don't measure defensive backs by, but I love to see, all these guys were really good in supporting the run as well as defending the pass and picking off interceptions or picking off passes for interceptions, returning them for touchdowns. Just for what I think really tough-nosed players, guys that I would want. I played linebacker, you played linebacker, guys that I would want behind me. And knowing that if something happened where I was not going to be able to get to the play, that these guys would get there. So my 4 defensive backs for top dog are first off is Avery Bellis from DePaul Prep, one of our Zuko's Dog of the Week winners. Not only, I think he picked off 6 passes this year, so 6 interceptions, but was always around the ball. All over the field, had over 80 tackles, was constantly filling a gap where other players maybe couldn't get there in time. But, I felt like DePaul Prep relied on Avery Bellis tremendously this year, and he delivered in a lot of aspects. The other is Garrett Reese from Nazareth. Another guy, one of our Zuko's Dog of the Week winners, maybe not the flashiest of stats, but, Garrett Reese made the big plays when they needed to be made. I feel like people or other teams kind of tried to avoid Garrett Reese, whether they were passing or where they were running the ball. He's just all over the field, tough kid. Can make all the plays you want a defensive back to make, and he did that in a variety of different ways this year. So he's one of my top dogs at defensive back. The other is Vince Irian from Montini, another player that just is around the ball constantly. The other thing that I loved about Vince this year was that he, when Montini, and they had a really good defense, he had a lot of good guys around him. When Montini needed a play, whether it was to stop somebody on a short 4th down, whether they needed a, interception, whether they needed a tackle for loss, Vince Irian was always there, always making a play, whether he was on the edge, whether he was in the backfield. They moved him all over. And the reason they did that is because he's extremely talented and makes plays no matter where you put him on the field. So Vince Irian, another one of my top dogs. The other, Tommy Thies from Fenwick. And we talked about Tommy Dan all year, and always we loved his toughness. We loved what he did on defense and the way he would come up and support the run. But he was also excellent at defending the pass. He also had a couple interceptions. He had a lot of pass breakups over the course of the year. Another guy with over 90 tackles this year. And a lot of those are solo tackles out, in the flat, or where he's the only guy, between the opponent and the end zone. And, Tommy Thies always seemed to come up with the play when it was needed. So those are my 4 defensive backs, and my 4 top dogs in defensive backs.
Awesome. Good list. We've got maybe just one of the same on this, but so my 4, Joe. So I kind of, again, was thinking about building a defense. Maybe you have a guy moving positions here because I think he can play it. I think he did maybe too at certain times. But I'm going to start with Donovan Robinson from Loyola. And I would put him. He's a big guy, and he'd be a huge corner. But I felt like he played corner, and I felt like he was a type of player for Loyola, Joe, that it almost was treated like an NFL defensive back that teams stayed away from. Noticed it, especially in the state championship game. I was like, are they staying away from Donovan Robinson? Are they looking where he's at and not throwing it his way? It really felt like that. And, a guy that caused the other offense to game plan against him. And just a big playmaker. a guy with a lot of stats to back up his solid play, and a leader on that Loyola defense. Donovan Robinson, one of my top dogs. My other guy that I would put at corner, he maybe know where this is going. Javi Payne from Mount Carmel. Love him. Love how he plays. A quintessential dog, and really plays that corner position physically. Is not the biggest guy, but will come up and stick you. Sure tackler, really good in coverage, versatile player, makes plays when you need plays made. Saw him stop teams on fourth down from week one against the Hun. I know they gave up a ton of points, but he made some great plays in that. He literally got my attention in that first week, and then kept it all year. Just an outstanding player. Joe, at safety, we've got our common one here, Avery Bellis. And you know what jumped out to me for Avery Bellis was his tackling ability.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was not the biggest guy, right? But he was an outstanding tackler. I saw him, the game I went and watched against Coal City, they had a really good running back, big kid. Avery Bellis was a lot of times, like you said, coming up and filling in that gap that's uncovered or that may be exposed. The free safety's got to clean up where other people aren't. He was outstanding at doing that, and just a great tackler for not a really big guy, a clear team leader. Coach Pastorella talked about how much they relied on Avery Bellis to steady their defense. So he was one of my picks, and my other pick, Joe, we have the same two, Tommy Thies. I said it there was no one who I watched this year that jumped off a film like Tommy Thies did. In that whatever game that was that I watched pretty closely, I was like, who is this? Just coming up, and he made me come up with that phrase you said earlier. Fenwick football will knock your block off. He and Jack Paris were two guys. It felt like Fenwick was going to hit you with all these great receivers. I want guys that are going to put a little bit of fear in those guys, and I felt like Tommy Thies did that as well or better than anyone in the league. Well, maybe as good as anyone in the league. I won't say better than anyone, but as good as anyone in the league. Really, really nice player. Only a junior, so big things ahead for him as well. So that's my four.
All right. Well, that's a good four, Dan, for sure. So we've got only two picks left, and that's for the athlete and for the specialist on the maybe say defensive focused players, right? So I think my two here for both of these, you've picked for some other spot, on our top dog team. But, from an athlete perspective, I'm going with Jack Paris from Fenwick. For athlete with defensive focus. And, it's not just because I feel like, Jack, deserves to be a top dog, which he does. But, when I looked at some of the things that he's done over the course of the year and, not only on defense, but, this is a guy that they moved around and put different places wherever they needed him, right? And there's a reason they did that, because the guy is dominant. He's a dominant player on defense at linebacker. I mean, sometimes they would put him at safety. They moved him over to offense as well. He scored a couple of touchdowns on the offensive side of the ball. And I think I mentioned this, or you and I talked about this earlier during the season, but I don't know where Jack Paris is going to college, but this is a guy that I want on my team. He is just a tough-nosed player, and at times he is just dominant. He goes from sideline to sideline. easier and faster than a lot of linebackers that I've seen in a long time at the high school level. And when he gets there, he just makes a play. I mean, he tackles. He tackles for loss. He sacks quarterbacks. He scores touchdowns. He forces fumbles. He breaks up passes. The guy's just an outstanding player. So, Jack Paris for me is a top dog from Fenwick, and I put him at the athlete position for my top dog on defense. Dan, specialist, I've got who you just talked about, Donovan Robinson from Loyola. Outstanding defensive back, but also made a ton of impact, in other ways for the team. He returned 2 kickoffs for touchdowns. I mean, on defense as a defensive back, he had a lot of tackles, a lot of pass breakups, a couple of interceptions, one for touchdown. Another guy that just goes sideline to sideline, is a big physical player as a defensive back. He's going to University of Washington, and he's gonna be a good player there. You can just tell he's got the size that they need, or that you want at the defensive back. But he has the ability to make plays in a lot of different ways on the football field, and he did that this way for Loyola. And like you mentioned, a lot of teams stayed away from him, but he made that kind of difficult, in some of the stuff that I watched. And, even though they were trying to stay away from Donovan, he was still making plays, all the way across the field. So, my specialist pick from a defensive standpoint for the top dog is Donovan Robinson from Loyola.
Okay. All right. So we've kind of flipped a little bit. So my athlete, Joe, and I wanted to create a player out of 2 players, and you'll get what I mean.
Is this a video game?
Yeah. Yes, it is. But I wanted to create a player named Vic Arion. So for Vince and Nick. But ultimately I went with, because they do so many similar things and are such similar players. But Vince Arion is my athlete. And it's because of what you mentioned, Joe, the fact that I saw him playing corner. I saw him playing, cover 2 safety. I saw him playing at the line of scrimmage, kind of an outside linebacker. And just playmaker. Guy is just an absolute playmaker. And you said it, from sacks, tackles for loss, setting the edge, interceptions, just making play after play. One of the great interceptions I saw all year when I went to the game against Byron, just a great play. He just was all over the field. Was a guy that is just a playmaker. He's just one of those guys that, if he's out there, he's going to find a way to impact the game from whatever position he's at, and a guy that will hit you in the mouth. Again, from wherever he's at, will take on linemen to set the edge. That's a big deal in high school football. It's a big deal everywhere, but really, you don't get a lot of guys who are great at it in high school football. He was outstanding at that. So Vince Arion is my athlete and a guy I want out there, Joe.
Awesome. Yep.
On the defensive side. My specialist, and I went back and reviewed a lot of film. And, one of my pet peeves of high school football, Joe, is when teams don't return punts or they don't catch punts.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. It's like, you have to practice it. And this guy did it as well or better than anyone in the league, I think. And that's Gavin Hagan from Providence.
Oh yeah. Okay.
What I like about that is that he did it. He embraced it. Number one, you could tell he loved doing it. He did it with confidence, and it showed up on the field. Multiple returns for touchdown, kickoff returns for touchdown. The guy was incredibly dangerous in the return game. and an all around great football player. Providence used him literally all over the place, and so none of his kind of offensive or defensive stats totally jump out, but you can see on the film he's a great football player, and it really showed up in the return game when he got to get his hands on the ball and with a little space, but the way he did it with confidence and embraced it is really what jumped out to me. So my specialist is Gavin Hagan from Providence.
All right, another awesome pick, Dan. Really good player, and I can't disagree with you on any of your picks.
No,
yeah,
same,
I can't.
Same.
Yeah, not at all. And we talked about that at the very beginning. That very tough exercise here, and coming up with our top dogs, especially if we limit ourselves. So
yeah, I'm
which
exhausted.
we've done. Yeah, but you can't be exhausted yet, Dan. We've got one more.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Are you ready?
God, how could we forget that?
Yes. So, we wanted to make sure that we picked a top dog kicker as well. And, for me, this guy is really deserving of this. And, there's several really, good kickers in the Chicago Catholic League this year. Now you and I talked throughout the year, and especially in our Friday Night Blitz, some of the extra point problems kicking that some of the teams had. But, one team that didn't seem to have that problem, and their kicker to me was actually a weapon, somebody that they could use and score some points, was Fenwick. And that player is Noah Sir. Fenwick kicker. He, I don't know what the exact number of points was, but, Coach Battaglia was not shy about running Noah Sir out there this year and being confident that he was going to get 3 points, all the way up to about 35, 37 yards, something like that is from a field goal standpoint. Just got a great leg. He's got that dog attribute that we like, really tough under pressure, made some really big kicks under, high pressure situations. The guy's been good for a couple of years now, and, he was really good as a junior. He was really good this year as well as a senior, make some big kicks. And like I said, this guy's a real weapon and a tough guy, a real dog from the kicking position. That's Noah Sir from Fenwick.
All right, Joe, we're in agreement. Yeah,
Awesome.
I saw the same thing you did. A guy who was consistent, a guy whose coach was not afraid to put him out there, was not afraid to go for 3 points. Going for it on fourth down now is kind of in vogue. But man, you're going to have some of those times where you're really giving up 3 points, and Fenwick didn't have to do that. They played a complementary style of football, so a solid kicker was really important to them. And Noah Sir was just outstanding.
Yeah.
And like you said, big kicks at big moments. I always think of Hawk Harrelson, the old Sox broadcaster.
Right.
Don't tell me what you hit. Show me when you hit it. And that was Noah Sir. And so kind of a big time kicker was like you said, steady all year. Really solid from, I think I saw 41 yards, had one. So good kicker and a good choice for both of us with Noah Sir.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. All right, Dan. So that's our Zuko's top dogs for this year. And we, I'll say for myself and probably say for you too, Dan, that, we really enjoyed watching and commenting on all of the games this year and watching all of these players. And as we mentioned, they're just an outstanding, outstanding year for the Chicago Catholic League, outstanding year for the players in the Chicago Catholic League, and outstanding year for all of our top dogs that we talked about tonight.
Yeah, it was great. And Joe, one thing we didn't mention, I'll mention these guys real quick. We both decided that the receiving core was so deep and tight ends kind of got shortchanged on it. But
Right.
we both felt like if we were putting a team together with this group of wideouts, we would be in what they call 10 personnel all the time.
Yeah, you said
3
you
or
wanted to
4
go
wide
4
receivers.
wideouts. Yeah, all the
Yes.
time. Yeah.
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 So, but there were 3 that got some accolades in all area teams that I saw pretty consistently. Brendan Loftus from Loyola
Right.
had a really good year, going to play college football at a pretty high level. Mateusz Niche from Marmion. We talked about him early in the year. Coach mentioned him moving from center to tight end, where he received some all-area votes, and Kyle Richardson from St. Lawrence.
Right.
So just wanted to at least mention those guys, as players. But yeah, we were a 4-wide team.
Yeah, for sure. We were 4 wide, and I don't think anybody will give us a hard time about that, Dan.
No.
No.
I think the production that you saw from the wide receivers shows kind of the trend in football from top to bottom, and those guys are such weapons now. So many unique ways to get those guys the ball that it just made sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, good. Well, that's our episode on Zuko's.
Already?
Top Dogs. Yeah, it's only been an hour and a half, so we're short, very short tonight, Dan. Yeah, but congratulations to all of our top dogs. It's very well deserved, and we're happy and that we got the chance to watch you throughout the year, to watch the games throughout the year, and some outstanding performances on behalf of all the Chicago Catholic League players, especially our top dogs. So congratulations to you. Thank you for listening. We will be back soon with some other episodes. So make sure you don't forget about us. Make sure you listen from week to week, and make sure you subscribe, like, and follow us as well. And as always, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you soon.